one that I can definitely learn more about. But let's just give it a try. There you go. Hello, everyone. Today is probably the happiest meeting of them all because it's a Mansis less meeting. Congratulations, he's out. This is just for recording purposes. My name is Ferdinando Castro Gonzalez, and I think I'm the only officer right now, which is fine. We're all officers, really, at the end of the day. But my job here is to ensure that all of you get to communicate properly here in this meeting. Just as a reminder, this is not a formal conversation. We're trying to keep this very informal, so don't feel pushed or pressure that if you don't know much about the subject, you cannot speak. I actually encourage you to speak as much as you can because that's the best way for you to learn about like the topic and kind of like have a better assessment directly of what you're saying or whether those train of thoughts could be like feasible or not. Just as a house rules or decorum, I hope that all of you can have the chat. If you are having issues finding the chat, please let me know because we use that to have the order of who speaks first and last. We sadly don't go by the raise hand because it's hard for me to know who is raising it first and later. So the way we go with this, usually, as long as my computer allows me to type, thank you, computer, we do an exclamation sign. So if you check the chat, there's an exclamation sign. That means I'm the first one to speak. If you want to speak, do the same. And that way I can check who is going first, last, and whatever. We keep an order throughout all the meeting. If you raise your hand, I'm assuming that you're going to try to respond to something that is being said right now, but it won't count as you actually proposing something new. If you're a little bit shy, feel free to type your response or your proposal, and I will read it out loud just so it can be saved in the recording. Beside that, normally Nancy is the one doing the announcements. Summer will be a themeless summer. That means that we are free to speak basically about anything. So if something that you really like about to explore philosophy, if you really, even if it is a weird topic, feel free to propose it and it could be considered for next week and so on. As long as it's summer, it's pretty much on the table. Check us on social media. All these recordings are usually like on YouTube, on Instagram, and whatnot. So if you want to see how popular you are, just go there, give it a like, subscribe, all the good stuff. And that's about it. I'm not completely sure, Lucas, if you have something to say before we start the conversation. If not, then we just start.
I didn't know if anybody has any background of studying Stoicism or kind of knows in general the thought. Anybody who wants to throw out kind of your perception of what the Stoic ideals are. If not, I'll give something to get us started. I just didn't know if anybody had read anything before, looked anything up. I just wanted to see kind of what the baseline was before so in general, I know what to at what level to pitch the meeting.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a general idea what the Stoicism is. I cannot say I'm like extremely proficient, but I do know that it normally values like there's like four it's not Homer, like it's like like four like I don't know something. It's like bravery or something like that, justice, I don't remember,
Virtues.
but virtues. Yes, like the whole idea is that you do not let emotions overcome your thoughts. So like you need to be like in some way like observing the world as it is instead of how you feel it to be, so you can be better based on the situation that is at hand. That, I mean, I'm summarizing it very like broadly. It's like a very summary, but it's basically that. Um, at least on my words, and I don't know if somebody else can add something in their words, but that's how I see it.
I was just going to say real fast that the virtues are wisdom, temperance, justice, and courage, apparently. But yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Okay. I know Luisa also can teach us a lot about this topic, but she's, she's the the hidden power. She always like, I don't say much until I bah! comes with the hammer. Like, you're all wrong. This whole conversation was useless. Now I'm letting you know what the true meaning of this word was. That's what she does. So she will wait until like it's like 45, 50-ish, and then say, "Oh, you've been discussing is wrong. Oh, all is wrong." Uh, That's peace.
Okay, I think I know the general level to pitch this at. So, I think in our world, the way that the majority of people that I talk to think about how to go about and interact with the world is we always think that we should be making progress, doing something, changing the world, having it shaped to something that we want to, a lot of times, even utopian ideals in the future. Stoicism comes in and they want to slice the world down the middle, and they say, listen, there's two aspects of the world. There's the part that we have control over, which is in general um, our mind, our reason, and there's the part that we're not in control over. You can think about you're not in control over your health. Things might happen to your body, and there's sometimes nothing you can do about it. You're not in control of other people and the way that they act and their opinions and their ideas. Um, uh, you're not in control of how much money you have, where you were born, the family you're born into. So the Stoic looks at all of these aspects of our world and says, man, there's a lot of aspects that are not under our control. And it doesn't seem like a good idea to sit around and worry about things that are not under our control. So what can we do? What's the solution to that? Their solution is to say, let's only worry about the things that are under our control. Not necessarily our circumstances, but the way I think about my circumstances. So he would, and there's even a famous Stoic who's a slave who uh, who says, you know, I was born into this circumstance, but I can't change it. So there's no use worrying about it. What I need to do is I need to accept my circumstances and be happy about it. Find a way to be joyous about the way the world actually is, not some idea about what something might come in the future or something like that. But okay, so that I think that's a good beginning to maybe start and throw the
Yeah,
discussion out.
that reminds me of an example I heard once, which is like, let's assume that you're going to work and there is traffic. Like if you're already in the traffic, like why would you get upset or be like in a bad mood if you already know that you're gonna be late? So just like put some music, enjoy the way because you're gonna be late regardless.
Yeah, it's
And
like focusing on the things that you can control, and
yes,
because
exactly.
whatever you focus on is what you're going to produce. Like if you're just worrying, you'll just overwhelm yourself and wouldn't be productive. So in order for us to achieve our full potential and be productive, we need to focus on things that are under our control. And I think it's more about changing yourself that will bring an impact and change in the world rather than trying to change everybody else. We don't have control over how other people think or talk or do things in the world, but we do have an impact and influence on ourselves. So
Yeah,
that's
and
what we
and
should do.
and Stoicism talks about that last part too. They normally insist in people not getting involved too much in gossip. But if somebody's talking like mean to you, like being bad at you, like you cannot control what they're saying, but you can control how you react. So I remember that one of the proposals was that instead of just getting upset, the whole idea was to laugh about the joke. It's just kind of like it's okay. I mean, he's saying it, so it's like, yeah, I'm fat. So what? I'm just, working my way out to being the fattest guy in the world. Like that's what I want to do. Kind of like I guess it's a way for you to kind of like shape your mind to look how you can be, I won't say happier, but how can you take the best of whatever is it that is happening in that specific moment. um but now my question is like over here for all of you, like, okay, we have all of this, but I mean, it sounds good so far, but like, can you think of something that could be bad about stoicism? Like, why isn't it more practice? Like, why is it so hard, like, example, like, to do this kind of stuff? Because it seems like a good way of thought, Like, yeah, like focus on you. Yay, everyone focus on oneself, and we're all gonna be fine. But why is it not more popular, Stoicism? Why is it so like outside? Like there has to be something bad about Stoicism.
Does it make you more like a cold person if you don't show emotions at all?
Well, but I think there is that idea that Stoicism is not emotions, but I don't think it's not emotion. They actually feel a lot. It's just like they, I think I don't know how to explain it, but they feel emotions. They just try to control them as much as they can and try to leave them without necessarily talking too much about it, which is in a sense also what they suggest, that you shouldn't be talking too much about yourself, just be to the point or something like that. It's too practical.
So
But
is it
mhm,
because when you're too like if you take all the circumstances that are happening around you, if you just go with the flow and just happy and you don't, then you become stagnant. I guess you don't try to achieve more because
yeah,
you're happy with everything and whatever you're getting in life. So you don't make a move to achieve more, I guess.
yeah, that's a good way of thinking. And I will move to Osita since he's the next one in line. But yeah, one way is like if you see the world as it is, there could be something that you can change. But if you just focus like, this is what it is, maybe you'd stop yourself from changing what it could be changed, but seems too difficult to deal with. Sometimes it can also be like a justification for you to accept some immoral actions to you that maybe should not be accepted. But okay, Osita, you're next, and then we move on to the queue.
Yeah, I was, yeah, I think I was just gonna piggyback off of what the person who was just talking just said, in that I'm personally like a really big fan of Stoicism, and it's one of my favorite, I guess, philosophies. But if we're talking about downsides, I would say that there is a lack of hope in the overall philosophy of Stoicism because there's such an emphasis on accepting things as they are. And I agree that like always fantasizing about a utopia isn't necessarily useful or constructive, but a little bit is, and just thinking about how the world could be better, um, or giving up hope. And I understand there are situations where there truly is no hope, but like that's exceptionally rare because even in the most dire situations, there can still be hope even if you don't see it. Um, and so, for one thing, I know some Stoics, at least Seneca, I think, wrote about. I don't want to call it the virtue of suicide, but it's totally permissible, I guess. There's nothing to commit suicide if there's no hope. It's like, hey, if that's your reality as you have accepted it, and it's just so unbearable, whatever it may be, whether it be like I don't know, prison or uh, I don't know, getting tortured on the rack or whatever it is, just kill yourself. That I guess that's what a Stoic would say, and I don't know, some people wouldn't agree with that. You could have an argument about whether maybe that is a better way to go out. Um, but that's a different discussion, I guess. But I would say like, yeah, that would be a downside. But I still personally like really enjoy Stoicism. I think it's very positive still. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it does has his. I think his highs are interesting to explore. But like you said, there are some situations, even in history, that seems like it is like hopeless, and we still have changed it. Even the whole thing of slavery, like back in the day, like who would thought that will change, and still it changed. So yeah, um, we definitely need to balance a little bit the stoicism. It seems. We have Eva here saying could be outwardly perceived as apathy or not caring, which is true. Now, Lucas, you're next.
Really enjoying discussions going actually in the direction I wanted it to go. So, um, I I don't know if it's Eva or Ava, but either way, it could be outwardly perceived as apathy. I wanted to focus on that word because it's from a Greek word, pathos. When we were talking about last week, our emotions. So one of the things the Stoics are worried about is they want to be apathetic. So is the negation of pathos, the negation of our emotions, not in the sense that we don't have any, but in the sense of we learn to be in control of them. No matter what happens to us, no matter what circumstance, no matter if we get sick, no matter if we lose our job, there's nothing that can change. And they think we have to cultivate over time a joy inside of us to life, to learn to accept circumstances no matter how they come to us, no matter what happens. So, for those who are talking about there's a lack of hope, the Stoic would come to that and say, there can only be a lack of hope if you judge your circumstance to be without hope. The problem is our judgment. And so what we need to learn to do over time is to reduce the negative emotions and increase the positive emotions of joy. Now, is this something that we can do? There's arguments all throughout Stoicism talking about maybe there might never be such a person as an absolute Stoic, but it's an ideal maybe which we can try to reach over time. It's a training we have to go through over time to train our emotions to react to ways that our emotions normally wouldn't react. All right.
Yeah, and you mentioned something with the whole word of apathy. I remember I wanted to say something. It's asleep in my mind. Yes. I also feel like part of the stoicism, which it could be like not too much a feeling, is like even it limits also how you can feel. I won't say love, but like specific situations, because it asks you, for instance, to embrace your family, knowing that they are gonna die. So it's like it kind of like it tells you like, yes, enjoy them, but also know that they will die. It's kind of like it's like like it keeps you in this mindset that you shouldn't allow yourself to feel that much happy, but at the same time you should feel grateful that you're living that experience. So it also limits your joy, which is to some degree contradictory in my mind, because if it is something that is trying to make you feel happy, but it's asking you also to not feel too happy because it will make you sad if you allow yourself to be too happy. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah.
But okay, I see the next one in the queue is Martha. So go ahead, Martha. Martha Duran.
Hello, I'm sorry.
Yes, hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I'm here philosophizing, so I cannot ask much more.
Okay. So, can I go back when you were talking about the virtues of Stoicism?
Only if you want to.
I mean, yes, I'd like to. Thank you.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Whenever I think about the virtues, personally, I think that Stoicism, even though it's supposedly contained, a person's emotions of, how they supposedly express them, but when you connect that to the virtues, I can only see that partially, because not all of the virtues, like whether you look on the good side or the bad side of them, I don't see how you can really directly connect it like that. Does that make sense?
Not completely sure in my case, but it seems like Lucas understand what you're trying to say.
Okay. I'm sorry.
You don't have to be sorry.
Yeah, okay.
I think I know what you're asking, and I think that probably the best virtue to focus on to understand Stoicism is temperance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they would say, okay, you're going to go out, you're going to have a good time,
Mhm.
and to do that, you're like, well, maybe I'm going to have a drink, maybe I'm going to have 2 or 3 drinks, and the Stoic would probably say, good, okay, go have a drink, go have 2 drinks. But what if you have 12 or 15? You're throwing up afterwards. You wake up with an extreme hangover. See, the pain that comes later, there might be a high arc of pleasure, but then there's going to be a deep arc of pain. So the Stoic's going to say pleasure's good, but with temperance. All things are good, but in mediation of the high highs always bring pain. So they want to avoid the high highs. So this is how you can kind of look at the virtues of Stoicism in light of trying to kind of accept the world the way it is. Also, wisdom. When they think about wisdom, it's looking at the world and saying to be wise is just to accept the way that the world is. So a second ago, Fernandito was talking about his family and they might die. Yes, that's accepting the way the world is, but also finding joy in our circumstance. Which means that what's another one of the virtues? Courage. Now we realize, okay, why is that a virtue? I'm going to have to actually be courageous in my circumstances because my circumstances are not always good. And in fact, as we get older, we're going to find more and more things that are painful. And then, yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I think I know what you're saying. Hopefully that like steers your question a little. You want to respond to those?
Yes. But is it also not like a person who you know, referring to stoicism, that they're not exactly an optimistic?
I think that they would a Stoic would say that they're optimistic. It's actually a really good question because I think it kind of hits the heart of Stoicism because yeah, you don't want a false optimism. In other words, you don't want to have a hope in something that is not under your control. So let's say you're in a relationship and you don't want to be optimistic in the fact that you accept and know exactly what this other person's going to do in the future, but you do want to enjoy what's going on right now. And and so yes, man, the only way I can say that is
I'm
yes,
sorry with the hard one.
yes and no, which means that no, that's an excellent question. Anything where you kind of hit at the heart of the problem, I think you're asking the perfect question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, good question indeed. And I see that Shasia is also having a question while stating that the Stoicism can kill imagination then, if they are too practical. Yes, it is true. But do you, Shasia, wants to ask your question then?
Yeah, so I also have a question, like if Stoics are people who are calm and peaceful and they accept the circumstances and they try to keep themselves happy, still motivated in whatever circumstances they're in, how much of a risk taker are they? And I mean, you can't have real success if you're not taking the proper risk. I'm not talking about taking stupid risks, but like calculated risks that would land you at a higher level of yourself. Do Stoics do that, or they just are very like scared of? I mean,
I don't think it means to be scared. It's just to again, as Lucas mentioned, is to accept reality as it is. So like I that's one of the things that I believe in Stoicism is that it limits your chances of like maybe improving something that it seems at least from that perspective that you had in that moment that it was impossible. For instance, for the traffic thing, maybe if you get too lenient, you're actually gonna get late because you accepted to be in traffic. But if you are actually not in a stoicism mode and just like I need to get there on time, maybe you're gonna be risky and start like going against the lights and like doing something, but you can actually make it on time. Just that I mean, you wouldn't have even try or attempt to be in time because according to stoicism just accept that you're going to be late.
so they become more creative in a way because
I
they're
won't
trying to
say
find a
creative,
solution
but
for their problems.
I mean you it's a different type of acceptance. In this case, you know that if you start like breaking the laws or trying to do some harm or whatever, you know there are going to be consequences, but you, I guess in some degree it could be good or bad depending on what action you take. I mean, if your way to avoid the traffic is to hurt everyone, then we're talking about something completely different in philosophy. But maybe you find a different way of not doing that. Maybe you just like you have a friend with an helicopter. It's like, hey, Joe, I will I will pay you like every month this type of just take me there and you just get on time somehow. Um, but I won't say it's a lack of imagination. It's just that um, they're more like acceptance of their fate, and sometimes you can change that fate if you just like affront it. If you actually like go against what it seems to be unrealistic to ask. At least that's how I see it. I'm pretty sure that Luca has something more to say in that regard, but that's how I see it. Um, okay, so yes, that's a good question. And I see Osita also wants to say something, so go ahead. But before Osita, you speak, I'm about to like avoid 2 comments. I cannot do that. Not on my watch. So we have Eva here. She said, feels emotions but don't acknowledge, speculate, react. Yes, I will say yes. That's something that the Stoicisms do. And then we have Francesca. So it's choosing to focus our energy elsewhere and not on emotions that may or may not be productive. Yes, Stoicism to some degree, for instance, if there is something that is affecting you emotionally and you have to make a decision, will encourage you to walk away, make yourself feel better, and then do the decision instead of doing the decision when you're emotional. But okay, Pasita, you're next.
Yeah. Um, I guess I wanted to respond to the comments, just like I guess my personal take on it. I guess when oh my gosh, when anyway, I can't find it. Oh,
Chasia?
Shazia, yeah. Um, uh, or what? No, actually, it was Martha. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, when Martha was saying about I guess pessimism in a sense. I've always sort of viewed Stoicism. I guess I think one of my favorite Stoics is Batman, and so that's what I'll use to sort of explain this. And that like Batman, I hope everyone knows who Batman is, but Batman, right? He's a superhero, and he fights with the Justice League, and he fights with Superman and Wonder Woman, and they're all friends, and they fight evil together. But he has a contingency plan to like deal with all of them because he understands reality. He understands that hey, these people might turn on me or whatever. So they might be poisoned with some gas or mind control or whatever. So I need to like plan for the worst, but like I'm still gonna like my reality right now is like we're superheroes fighting evil together or whatever. But it's just very uh I don't know. That's just, I guess that's like how I would put it. And I liked how Lucas put it. It's like, yeah, you're in a relationship. You never know. Like this person might cheat on you, but like that's not something that's going to consume your thoughts or whatever. Right now, you're in a happy relationship, and that's your reality. But reality can always change, and you have to accept that. But I would say, I guess my opinion about like Stoics and like emotion is that or like Stoics and both emotion and like maybe risk taking. That's when I was like, I wanted to respond to Shazia about that. In that what I think, how I maybe someone can, you know, correct me or rebut this, but I would think that a Stoic would, you know, I don't think a Stoic would be hesitant to take a chance. I think like, okay, let's say I want to be a rock star. I think the Stoic would say, if you want to be a rock star, or I want to be a UFC fighter or something like that, okay, then if you want to be a fighter, it's a better whatever example. You're gonna have to train, and that means you're gonna have to get hurt. You're gonna be hurt. You're gonna lose. You might not make it, but like you have to be sort of if you're gonna do it, you have to put everything into it, sort of thing, and you can't waver. So if this is something that you want to do, then okay, logic, I guess, would dictate that you're gonna have to, eat healthy. You can't drink. You're gonna have to work out a lot. You're gonna have to train a lot, and that's gonna be hard. It's gonna be painful, and you're gonna have to just like put that pain or emotion aside and keep going until you reach your goal, and you have to realize that you may never reach your goal. I think that I don't know if they would, more. I don't know. I guess that's
Yeah,
how I would view it. Yeah.
I think I was mentioning it to some degree. It's like encourage you to take on the challenge, but at the same time understand that you may not make it. It's kind of like it wants you to be optimistic, but having that negativity on the side, like lingering, like, hey, the reality might be that you don't get it, but still try. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and it's a good way to get through the hard times by using, I guess, those Stoic principles to like, put off any doubt, I guess, or negative emotion that would kind of just like take time away from training or focusing on your goal or whatever. Because until you don't make it, you can still make it pretty much. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. All right. So now we have Daniel on the queue. The floor is
Yeah,
yours.
thank you. Um, I want more than a question. I want to clarify something for me. So I don't know much about this topic, but from what I've learned in other classes or in previous experience, is that Stoicism is more than just an attitude, right? Is the act or the desire of self-improvement. So in a way, I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it based like with encouragement, self-discipline, or um, there was like others too? There was like four different types. But in a way, what I see it is that they are very conscious that the world is like cause and effects. So they will take risks and they will practice and they will do all the necessary things because they know that what they are doing is going to benefit to the effect of their causes, right? But is it that, or is it just like an attitude only, like I'm not going to be affected by my surroundings, by the other people, by the other opinions? Or is it just that desire of self-improvement and that knowledge of connectiveness or cause and effects? What is it more of a, I don't know,
Well,
this is.
I think it's a bit of both. I don't think you need to like emphasize in just one aspect. I do think it's an attitude, and I also think it's a way for you to self-improve. It does involve actions. It involves even your own thoughts, because some exercises that requires you to actually put yourself in the position of others whenever they're telling you something. So it's a little bit of everything, and I think this is applicable for almost every philosophy, like thoughts, like whatever it is that is said in English. I don't think you can just try to set it in just one square, because normally the reason why we talk about it is because it's applicable to many things. So yeah, I would say it's everything that you mentioned and not just one thing. Um, that's how I see it. Okay, so we have here in the chat, Shasia. So that's her words. If they are not showing any emotions, do they channel it elsewhere? As unexpressed anger and negative emotions do have a bad impact in our physical and mental health. I don't think they don't show any emotions. They do. It's just that they try to keep it in as much in control as they can. Again, they encourage you to be happy that you have your family, but at the same time realizing that you're gonna be sad, so don't be too happy. They're having emotions. It's just that not, they're encouraging you to not feel it too much, but still feel it. And then just for the record, I said I'm Batman, but that's based on the comment that Osita was saying. But anyways, we move on. Luca is next, so go ahead.
Yeah, there was some questions coming up about practicality, and is this something that's just internal, and how is it related to action? And I thought, I think probably the best way to look at that issue is that the way we think about the world is at the same time the way that we're going to engage with the world. So if we the Stoics would say then, if we have a correct belief about the world, if we know the way it is, which means that we have to study logic and we have to study physics and nature and understand the way the world really is. And once we get that understanding, then we act according to the way the world actually is. So, of course, the Stoics think that they can discover and kind of know the way the world is. And then we just need to accept how it is. I mean, our lives are going to be exactly how they are now, except for areas which we discover that we can't control, we're going to quit worrying about. And areas which we discover we can control, then we can take more of an active role of controlling those. So I wouldn't think of this as something that, think of this as the ultimate practical guide to life. It's not this grand theoretical thing, although they do think that you have to understand the world. It's about engaging what you're doing now. So whatever you're doing now, the things that aren't under your control, we'll quit worrying about them. But the things that are under your control, engage more. But do it with kind of a joy and inward joy, knowing that whatever happens, that's okay. And you're going to be able to control the areas that you can control, your own mind, your own feelings, the way that your own judgments. But yeah, that's in general how I would try to answer that question. Oh, and later Marcus Aurelius. So you see this idea when it comes into the Roman world actually starts getting implemented with even Roman rulers. So you see that it can have a social change also. Although it does seem to start out kind of as an individualistic control myself, it can reverberate out into other areas of things that we can change also.
Yeah, I think Nelson Mandela got inspired by Marcus Aurelius' writings, and he implemented that to the whole thing of South Africa when he was like in prison or something, which is a fun fact. But well, now we have Pasita. You're next.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I really love this topic, so I'm gonna keep talking. But I guess I want to throw out that I always thought it was interesting about Stoicism, like their idea of ataraxia. I think that's it, and it always reminded me, or I guess yeah, sure, it reminded me of like the Buddhist idea of nirvana. I could see a lot of parallels. I guess, in some of the, because I think, with the talk of like, oh, Stoics they're like Spock, they're like Vulcans, they don't show emotion, they're like robots or whatever. And I think it's like, like the common misconception, I'm no expert on Buddhism, but like, as I understand it is, a Buddhist doesn't want to have like no desires because that's not possible. Because then, you're desiring to have no desires or whatever. But you just want to have like the right desires. And so it's like, maybe I would say that a Stoic doesn't want to have like no emotion. They just want to have constructive emotions or the right emotion, or like, something like that. Or you channel negative emotions into good acts or something like that. If, I don't know, like, whatever. If you're, I don't know, overweight and you're sad about it, channel that sadness into like, I don't know, working to lose weight. I'm fat, so I can say that. So before, don't write me any letters. It's okay. But yeah. So but yeah, I guess I wanted to throw that out. I don't know.
Oh, cool. So I mean, we have Eva's kind of like asking question because of Osita's comment. She's saying that she's wondering whether Buddhism can be considered Stoic. I never really thought about it. I mean, it makes sense like right now. I have to give it more proper consideration, but I do think that there are some parallelisms with at least the example that Osita mentioned. I don't want to say yes or no right now. For me, the whole concept of Buddhism could be a topic on its own. Which it can be the topic for next week. Why I didn't thought about it. I don't know. I'm gonna think about it.
There's also the idea of I think so I think that, well, I guess there's also the idea of, like, I think in Stoicism, I mean, I don't know, they're not really tenets, but like they're like disparate writings, I guess, of, like, periodically denying yourself, I guess, the comforts of life, to sort of remind yourself that you don't need so many material things to sort of make it through the day-to-day life. I think that's an idea of Stoicism, and you can kind of find echoes of that or parallels of that in Buddhism. But again, I've always thought of Stoicism as less of, I guess, a philosophical. I mean, it is a philosophical, like, school of thought, but I think Stoicism is more of like a term for, like, a trait or an emotion, not emotion, but sort of like kindness or something. It's like you can, or like love in a platonic sense. I don't know, where anyone can, like, be stoic in a situation or employ the use of, like, stoicism to, like, to not, get into, like, a bar fight or something. Just, like, be not to not get angry, or to I don't know, sort of like focus on what you're doing in the moment. I don't know if, just in the same way as people can, like, choose to be kind to someone in a moment, it feels, because I feel like there's echoes or there's principles of stoicism. Maybe this is true for every, I guess, philosophical thought, but, like, in, like, different religions, for instance, you'll see it in Christianity and Buddhism, um, and things like that. And it just seems like it's more of like, oh, and I don't know what you call kindness. I don't know if that's like an attribute or an emotion. I don't know, like, the technical term is, but I've always thought of something like that, where it's something you can kind of, like, use. We all kind of, like, know how to do it. Like, for instance, we all know that we're going to die one day, right? That's like an impending doom that we all kind of, like, are stoic about or whatever. And we've learned to do that. So we all, like, practice it, I guess, to a degree. But yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, but before I let Daniel speak, I do want to consider, for this, since we're like reaching the almost an hour meeting. There were a couple of questions that I asked on the email, and again, if you're not receiving the emails, please feel free to send me whichever email works for you, either here in this chat or personally, so I can add you to our mailing list, and you can have all the sweet information from our club. Yay! Just saying. Um, yeah, I did ask a couple of questions here, which is like, do you feel like this philosophy could be applicable in today's society? And also if it can help you achieve happiness. So if you still want to like participate, think of these questions and maybe say something in that regard. But for the moment, Daniel is next and then Lucas.
Well, actually, my question would be related with those. So, how could we train? I mean, it's like an attitude, is that, but how could we train it in, I mean, in this new era, you could say, or yeah, sure, it's easy to say that you don't care about other stuff, but how do we put it in practice? How do we start, like, baby steps? I mean, that's, I don't know, it's kind of stupid, but what is your perspective on that?
I mean, there is this issue, which is like, I guess it depends on the scenario. Like, let's say if there is like racism involved. In my case, I won't just like, oh, I'm gonna be happy about it and just let it go. I will be like, you know what? For me, in this case, being angry will be a proper emotion. I mean, not necessarily angry, but the very least upset and trying to like change something. Um, but if I go into the whole mentality of being a stoicism, the whole purpose is to self-reflect. They encourage you after every day before you go to sleep to think of when you have been morally challenged and see what you could have been better or what you could have been wrong. Like what could have you done better and what you did good. So that way, every day you work on consciously changing those attitudes that could have been not stoicism. Would that make sense? So it is like a
Yeah, so
daily
like a constant
activity.
training, right?
Yeah, you have to be constantly training yourself to be mentally aware that you're supposed to act in a specific way every time. They also encourage you to check on your first responses to any scenario. So if somebody say, "Hey, what's up?" and you're like, "Ah," like why do you did that? And if that response was under your control, then try to change it. But if it was something that you cannot change, then don't worry about it. Just move on. So,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is like after everything that happens to you. So, I would say that for you, if you really want to live a stoic life, it requires you to be self-aware a lot, because you are being encouraged to check every action you made and to see which one of them were under your control, so you can fix them next time it happens.
Yes, thank you. I was asking that because everyone has different perspective, everyone has different backgrounds, different way of thinking. So, yeah, thank you for your answer.
It's okay. I'm glad that it was good for you. All right. So, Lucas, you're next. Yes, you're next. That's it.
Uh, I really enjoyed so much of the discussion today, and there was only one other thing that I thought I could add that might lay Stoicism kind of within a historical context and kind of make some people maybe if you're like, well, okay, this is impossible. How we do this? Maybe explain why that feeling is coming up. So the Stoics, as a whole, almost always saw the universe as kind of one being, an organism, and we lived on that organism. So just as on my body, my one of my cells, it just does what it does. So a skin cell is just going to be a skin cell. So a human being who's born on that organism is just going to be whatever it happens to be. And the Stoic looks at what he believes his situation is in life and he just accepts it. I think it's one of the reasons it's hard for us today is because it looks that like we can manipulate the world so well and create new technologies which can almost create new bubbles where a lot of these ancient systems, things that they just said we should accept, we look at it and say, no, we're going to change it. So I think one of the reasons Stoicism's difficult to get into is because we have such a spirit inside of us of the ability to do almost anything that we want. And so there's this fight going on between reading these ancient ideals. Somebody said Stoicism's very much like Islamic philosophy. Yeah, coming up within the same ground of looking at the world as a difficult place to live. You have half of children dying in childbirth, 30-40% of women dying every time that they have a child, most kids not making it past 8. You look around and the weather is not something that you can predict and think about. It's something that happens to you. Disease coming in, you don't know where. It's invisible and just coming and infecting people. So the world's a difficult place to live. And I think one of the reasons why some of these more ancient systems like Stoicism, although I think it has a lot to teach us, why it's difficult to understand at first is because we just don't view our world that way. Everything seems to be able to be changed. But I just wanted that's really the last aspect of kind of looking at ourselves versus Stoicism that I wanted to say. So I just wanted to throw that out there in the end.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like, part of the reason why it's so less applicable, I guess, is because exactly that today's society changes so rapidly, and every time that we think, no, this cannot be, and then boom, yes, you can do it. You have people here like changing, I mean, their genres, their skin color, the way that their nose is, like they can fly, they can do so many things. They can, I don't know, it's crazy. So, and before that was not even the case. It's like, hey, you know what? You are fat, accepted. Now you can just do like a lipo and you're skinny now, and like you didn't have to accept it as long as you have resources. So, like, yeah, today's society also, the whole social media aspect, it it throws at your face things that go against Stoicism, which is like meddle in unimportant matters. Like normally, the Stoic will ask you to constantly engage in complex and topics that are gonna encourage you to be better instead of just I like this soda so much, like because it tastes fruity. Like that for Stoics is like, oh, please don't talk about it. That's stupid. But I mean, we find that with the whole concept of memes everywhere. Like, I mean, right now we're laughing at memes in this very chat. That would be very unstoic, and yet here talking about Stoicism, we're doing that. So it goes really contrary to what we could seem as a normal way of behaving in today's society. But I do think that we can use some of the Stoics like practices to be better as overall. Um, but how to balance it? I mean, maybe I'm not the right guy to talk about it right now. But okay, we have Shasia here. She's saying Stoicism seems something relatable to Islamic philosophy too, living life in balance. Yes. Then we have self-reflection is called tazkiyah, an important part of Islamic practice. Wow, similarities I see here. There you go. Then we have many good gifts. I see that good stuff. Chasha, you too. Um, and then we have George. Hi, George. The floor is yours.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, so I was wondering, like, Osita was saying earlier that Stoicism is just kind of something you practice, right? So you can practice it no matter what your religious beliefs may be. So I was wondering, is that it? Is Stoicism really just a very like pragmatic, this is what works, so this is how you should do things? Or is there like a story that goes along with it, a worldview that goes along with it? Is there some kind of narrative context for this is why these things work? Or is it just like, it works, don't ask questions? Like, what's going on here?
If you're wanting historical background, it's coming out of an era where people are starting to be skeptical about belief systems. And because there is the rise of a lot of very skeptical belief systems in Greece at the time, people start to retreat back into themselves and to say, well, to some extent, I can't control everything that's going on out here, and also, kind of tumultuous social circumstances. What I can control is my own judgment about what happens. So if you think about the story of Sisyphus, who's condemned by the gods to push a rock up a hill over and over for the rest of eternity. So they're going to say somebody like Sisyphus, just accept your circumstance, because that's what you're going to be doing for eternity, and accept it with joy. Enjoy doing it. Say, you know what? I actually enjoy pushing this rock up a hill for eternity. You meant it as a punishment. You meant it as something against me, but in order to spite you, because I can't ever change this, I'm going to enjoy it. So I think that's skepticism about beliefs, and then a realization that our minds can shape and control reality to some extent through judgment would be the two like historical backgrounds of thinking about how Stoicism came about.
Thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. As a Christian, I am not skeptical about beliefs, I guess, in that same way. I have my belief, I have my narrative, I have my story, right? And I'm used to connecting the whys of what I do to a story. And a lot, I think, of what's being said about Stoicism, I'm like, yeah, that seems pretty reasonable, seems pretty reasonable, seems pretty reasonable. So I'm just like, I could see how that fits in with Christianity in X, Y, and Z ways. So I thought it's been interesting, good discussion.
By the way, just to add so that you can have it in a Christian perspective. So the Stoicism called the reason which pervades the entire universe. That which is really real, the logos. And Christianity is actually going to take over and use the same term. They're using a Stoic way of talking about the world. And the logos being the reason is the thing that the Stoics say that we need to, we accept the way that the world is. And so just as the world has a logos, and that's the truth about the world, whenever my mind it mirrors that logos correctly, then I'm accepting the way that the world is on its own terms.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's something I've heard even in church, right? John 1, the evangelist says, the word became flesh and dwelt among us, right? Referring to Jesus, the word there, the logos, right? So that has significance in Judaism, its own like meaning. But the other one was the Stoics with their divine word, and the evangelist was being, very clever in his use of that word and saying, look how, these two different concepts, this Jewish concept and this Greek concept, kind of came together in Jesus, in God's revelation of Himself through Jesus. So yeah, thanks for bringing that one up too. That was very interesting as well. I read an article before getting here because I was like, I need to learn a little bit about Stoicism because I don't really know enough to even talk about it. One article I read said one difference between Stoicism and Christianity is this idea of prayer that, and this is with other religions too, this idea that you could pray and talk to a personal God to ask them to make changes or ask them to do something in the world. Whereas this guy was saying that's kind of lacking in Stoicism. Was he right about that?
Yeah, he's definitely right. The Stoic God is not a personal God of any sort. It's an impersonal being which is alive, and we are like little cells which are part of that being. And so we are part of that God, almost like a pantheistic ideal. There's not, I mean, and so the world is kind of determined. Whatever I am is whatever the logos determines that I am. And so that's part of what they're trying to accept, is there's part of who we are that we can never change. But yeah, it's not a personal God that's separate from the world or anything like that. So that idea is different from Christianity.
I'm learning a lot.
I'm glad, and that's part of the reason why we do this. So good stuff. Now we have a couple more comments. We have Alexander. He said, I never really thought about self-reflecting on our responses at the end of the day. I would start practicing this. Good stuff. Yeah, that's a good practice to have. Then Luisa is saying goodbye. She left. And we have Eva. Eva, you're next. Eva, Eva, Athena and Mason. Hello. I know you're there. I think you're there. It shows like red. Let's see. Is your mic working? I'm not completely sure. I cannot hear anything, but I know Osita is next after you.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay, that's weird. Okay. So yeah, it goes really well into what George was talking about as far as the Christianity and Stoicism. So I won't go into much details, but something happened a couple years back that deeply affected me, and it was one of those things where you don't have any control. And for so long after, you were waiting for the world to end kind of thing. And prayer and the Bible and all that helped me, sure, definitely. There's no way I could have possibly gotten through it otherwise. But during that time, and since then, I know I'm an incredibly emotional person, so it's not like it's made me not emotional, but I have gotten so much better at accepting the reality of the way things are and the things that I cannot control or whatever. And just being able to, like I said, I still have emotions, but it's not like it's the end of the world, even if maybe the thing is the very much the end of the world, you know. I don't know. I found myself a lot happier, like like you were asking, you know, like I don't think that there's this, you know, incredible high that I'm reaching, but it's more like, oh, I have a like continuous, consistent level of being able to deal with whatever's going on, no matter how tumultuous it may be. And I don't consider myself a stoic, but definitely attributes of the philosophy have made my life a lot better. So that's what I'll say. It does make you happier. And I mean, I definitely think Christianity, obviously, I couldn't have done it without that. So it was kind of combination. But yeah, so with regards to the happiness, it definitely made my life better in that way.
Yeah, thank you. It was a very nice comment. And then we have Asita.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to ask, I guess the Stoicism. So, you know, in whatever Greece, wherever it originated or whatever, when people would practice this, is this something that people would practice as like a bona fide religion, or was it a philosophical thought as we would see it today? I guess I'm not really sure how they. Yeah, I guess. So was it a rejection of like the Greek pantheon of gods and they're kind of. Yeah, I guess I was curious because I see it as just philosophical, right? Like I'm not sure how if it was maybe at one point organized. I don't know. Maybe if
Yeah.
anyone has any insight on that.
Yeah, I can answer that. So probably all of the philosophical schools, the way that you're thinking of them, nothing like that ever existed in the ancient world. In the ancient world, it was almost everything was like a little commune. So the Stoics got their name from this place called the Stoa, which is actually where the Stoic teachers did their teaching, and then they would have people with them who were their followers and who would follow along and kind of do life with them. You see this get taken to extremes with people like the Pythagoreans, who become a very tight. Sorry, I'm trying not to use technical language. I'm translating in my head. So they're doing. You should not schools in the sense of the way that we think of schools. You should think of them as kind of different little religions. That's what philosophies were. Philosophy was a word that just it encompassed everything about life. When you took under the tutelage of someone's philosophy, you became part of that school, became part of your identity. And so when you became a Stoic, you followed that way of life. It's all of the schools of philosophy are ways of life. Later, when you have like medieval universities in the 12th and 13th century, all the way to the modern era, you see the philosophy, which was part of the countryside, part of the people, gets integrated into the city and becomes something that becomes more professionalized. So that's something that actually happens later. The way that we think about learning and things like that happened way later. But all the ancient schools were ways of life.
Thank you. That's really interesting.
Okay, good stuff. Now we have Chasia. She was saying there is a very interesting concept of NLP, which says perception is projection, which seems to be part of Stoicism too. There are two ways of seeing the story of our life. Either we see difficulties as obstacles, and we start feeling hopeless when we can change our environment, or we can see challenges as gifts that are there to bring us to our higher level of self, and we start working on ourselves and creating solutions for them. Yeah, I like that comment a lot. Then Francesca is saying that she's gonna meet us again next week. Good. And then Alexander, like cliques or groups within early philosophy. That's I guess a question for Lucas. Alexander is saying, based on the comment of like the communes of philosophy.
Yeah, the word I would want to use is you should think of them like you would think of religions now. So they're groups which are teaching people ways of living, and when you become part of that group, you take on the identity of that group, and you would probably refer yourself as a Stoic, the way that people now would refer themselves as Christian or Muslim or something like that.
Very interesting. Well, okay. I know that we have been over an hour already on meeting, so I guess we can always try just to like wrap up. Thank you so much for being here. This was, I mean, I knew it was gonna be a very good topic, but I mean, the meeting today exceeded my expectations. So I'm really grateful for that. Thank you again, Lucas, for being here, teaching Nancy how he's supposed to be an advisor during the meeting.
Yeah,
But
I had a question about that. Ferdinando, did you say earlier that today was going to be Manzi's last meeting?
No, Mancy-less meeting. Like
Oh, a
no
Manzi's
Mancy.
last meeting.
No
Okay.
Mancy. Yeah, no
I
Mancy
was
at all.
like,
He
what
was banned.
happened? Where is he going?
He's not going anywhere. But I mean, this was a test to like, move him from this position. That was all there is. So, and it worked out like a charm. No, but no, he will be next week. It's gonna be fine. Don't worry. He's not leaving anywhere. But well, again, thank you again. If you want to receive more information about it, if you are not already in our mailing list, just let me know. Feel free to reach us out, suggesting any topic that you want to discuss, because we may actually use it as our next topic for next time. And again, thank you so much. I will be working on this video this week, so I can post it on YouTube. Feel free to like leave a comment there if you want to. If you're in your class, that can actually be for you for extra points, just saying. And yeah, just think about it. Thank you again, and see you next week. So I'm gonna stop the recording.
Are we going to start meeting in person anytime soon?